kind of ridiculous. And what happened is that Dana asked me to get involved. And when she asked me, I started researching about chickens, and I don't actually keep chickens, but I started researching about it, and myself and Carol Peterson got in touch with Gwenne, because Gwenne helps towns all over the state get chicken ordinances passed. So with that, Gwenne, if you would like to introduce yourself more.
Okay. I'm Gwenne Baile, and I live in Haddon Township in Camden County. We're about 10 minutes from the Ben Franklin Bridge into Philadelphia, to help you kind of figure out where that actually is. And as Ali said, I started working in my own town. I'm a retired registered nurse and certified nurse midwife. And I really decided that I'd like to check out getting chickens. And it was about 2010, right after I retired. It actually took me 5 years of working off and on, taking a lot of classes. I had already, by the time we got our first pilot, had taken at least 60 hours of backyard chicken classes, live webinars, would have been more like Zoom back in those days, not just, watching a video when nobody was talking. So anyway, we went through a big process, and then in 2015, we got a pilot program. We were actually the second pilot. The other one was very tiny. We didn't know each other. We were working on it. And we were the first real decent sized pilot. We had it for 3 years, mainly because we wanted to tweak a little bit of it when we got our ordinance, and we compromised with the mayor to keep it another year, because we don't go by property size either. What we go by is the distance from your coop and your run to your contiguous neighbors' windows and doors. And that was based upon a really interesting, very long law review article, based on the fact that if you keep your coop clean, your neighbors at that distance are not going to smell it, so it won't be an issue. And especially not having roosters, even hens walking should not be so loud that it would disturb them, wake up their babies, whatever. And is kind of compared to the same noise as if you and I were out in my backyard chatting. Neighbors might say, gee, somebody's in Gwen's backyard, but they probably couldn't even understand what we were saying. So we also had 4 chickens, but we were allowed to have 4 hens. We wanted to up that. Therefore, we needed to up the size of the coop. So whatever, we were the only town that had a 3-year pilot. Most pilots now are 2 years. I recommend 2 years. A few started out with 1. And at this point, as of you passing, since I did have a little input in this, although certainly being many, many, many miles away, I didn't have as much as I do around here. Zoom's been a big help, because I've been able to go to council meetings around the state when it's something that they were still doing on Zoom. Now that they're opening up, it does kind of make it a little harder to do that. So now I'm up to 15 towns in New Jersey that have either gotten pilot programs or passed ordinances. So that's pretty cool, considering I'm not an attorney. I learned a lot in the 5 years that it took to get chickens here. Got used to working with council people. I'm not intimidated standing in front of councils and discussing this. And it's just been a really wonderful experience for a retired nurse midwife who now holds chickens instead of babies. So I'm going to attempt to switch over and share my screen so you can see my presentation. And we should be good. Slideshow from the beginning. All right. So here we are, scooping the coop. Pets, backyard hens are pets that give you breakfast. None of your other pets can do that for you. And here we go. So we're going to talk about the ABCs of chickens. And if anybody's into anything interesting, you'll know that that picture is chicken pot pie. Oh, Allie, by the way, because I can't see you while I'm doing this. So if people have questions, Allie, will you kind of monitor that and interrupt me off and on?
Yeah.
Because
can you guys all see the screen? No, I don't think I can't.
I can't see it. Yeah,
No,
I can't see it
not
either.
heard
Yeah.
yet.
Yeah,
Ah,
Nothing is coming through.
okay.
Uh-oh.
Can you see it now?
Mm-mm.
Oh my goodness. This is how I always do this. All right, let me go back. This is not good here.
I think they recently changed the Zoom settings. If it updated that once you share, you need to pick which window you want to share, I think.
Right,
There
is
you
that
go. It's loading. Yep.
Oh, yep, it's starting now. There we go.
I gotcha. Sorry about that. Yeah, I had updated it a little bit because the kind of the thrust of what was on your advertising about the program, I felt it needed to be a little more focused on actual chicken care and kind of not as much on sustainability. So I did play around with it, and that's probably why we had a problem, and I apologize for that. All right, so you still can see it, right?
Thank you. Yes.
Good. Okay. All right. So anyway, this little picture is actually chicken pot pie. I thought it was cute. So all about the benefits of raising chickens. And I'm sure a lot of you already know some of this, but always good to know more. Of course, the wonderful eggs. And I think it's a really interesting thing that when your chickens are out in your grass, eating what they're supposed to eat, not only their pellet food or whatever, but eating grass and eating insects and all, you'll see that the egg yolks are so much more orangey in color than when you buy your eggs at the store. It's one of the easiest ways to know where your chickens lived. And it's really also interesting to me that chickens that are pastured doesn't mean pasteurized like milk. Pastured means they're in grass, which is what they should be doing. So hens that are raised on pasture compared to standard eggs have much more beta carotene, vitamin A, vitamin E, and omega-3s, a whole lot less cholesterol and saturated fat. So they're actually healthier for you than if a chicken was confined. I love this picture as well. This is how many eggs are actually growing in a hen at any one time. So you can see all the way down to where they're still kind of in the chicken ovary, if you want to call it that. And these are all the colors of eggs. And of course, it depends on the breed of chicken that you get, what color eggs you get. They can have variations on the theme. I have one that makes between a white and a pale pink, so it's kind of between 12 and 1 o'clock. I have a bunch that make kind of the 2 o'clock ones. And then I have one that makes the 7 or 8 o'clock. It's greenish, and I have one that makes baby blue eggs. So it's really kind of neat, and it's a really great educational tool. I also have therapy chickens. You're going to see that too, but we do an awful lot of schools. We work with special needs kids and just generally people in general. And when you can take a sample of your eggs in we poke the hole in, take the inners out so I can use them for demos. We can explain that even though all the eggs look different on the outside, we're all the same on the inside. So it's a really neat way for people to look at that. It is funny that some people still are just a little wary about whether, geez, I should eat a blue egg, because they're not used to that. Everybody's into, of course, white or brown. And this is just the thing that kind of goes over some of the names of the egg of the chickens. So whatever egg color that they start to have, that's what they're going to have the whole time, because there's actually a inside the chicken that is what colors the egg. So a blue egger is always going to have a blue egg. And I do believe that spoiled hens make better eggs. My chickens have a spa life, I think. I think it's important, even if you don't have chickens at this point, or you're still thinking about it, is how to store your eggs. And it's really important that you store them pointy end down. That means the biggest surface of the egg is up, so that it's keeping any extra air, maybe bacteria or whatever, from getting into the egg. So even if you purchase them in the store, before you put them away, take a look and make sure that they're all with the pointy end down. Now I have two different kinds, but right now I'm looking at 3 egg skelters on my counter in the kitchen, like the one on the left-hand side. They're like log flumes almost. So obviously if the ones you have at the bottom are the older ones, so it's easier and I don't have to mark them and all that kind of stuff. I know if they're the bottom ones, they're been the longest. One of the things with backyard chicken keepers is we don't wash our eggs. I think it's an interesting thing that we have to make sure. I even wrote something up and made little pieces of paper that I stick with a rubber band around the eggs I give people, especially if they've never had my chicken's eggs before, that we don't wash them because when a chicken has an egg, it's covered with a clear, transparent coating that dries 20, 30 seconds max after it's laid. And as long as that's kept intact, that's not going to get spoiled or whatever. The eggs that get spoiled would tend to be ones that were washed or for some reason maybe got real wet in the coop and you didn't know that, but that's pretty much doesn't happen. One reason that eggs in this country have to be refrigerated is because these commercial farmers, when they collect the eggs, they send it to the processing place and they rinse them, soap them, rinse them, disinfect them, and rinse them again. So they've removed every single bit of protection from any kind of organisms. And that's why you have to keep your eggs in the refrigerator. Those of you that may have traveled around Europe and whatever, they don't do that. You'll find the eggs sitting on a counter next to the tomatoes, not in the refrigerator, because they haven't been washed either. So it is an interesting concept. And I do tell people, look, if it's going to make you feel better, I don't care if you refrigerate them, but you don't have to, especially even in the summer when it's hot in the house, as long as, well, if you have air conditioning, it's really not an issue. Another thing about eggs is that when chickens molt, and that usually starts around August to September-ish, and they can lose a lot of feathers or sometimes not a whole lot. It depends on the breed and the chicken. They usually don't molt till they're over a year old, but they can't make eggs and make feathers at the same time. So when a chicken's molting a lot, you're going to see your egg supply go down. The other time you're going to see your egg supply go down is in the winter, and it has nothing to do with cold. It's the fact that the daylight hours are shorter, and they do need about 14, 15 hours, give or take, most breeds, in order to lay. If they're younger, they may lay all year long. Some chickens lay more frequently than others anyway. And then there's other ones that pretty much as soon as it gets shorter days, they stop laying. So this is a good thing to know with the eggs. I mean, what I do is usually around August to September, I might stockpile 6 dozen eggs in my downstairs refrigerator, which we don't open that much because it's the extra refrigerator. And they're fine in case my chickens don't give me very many eggs. It's only my husband and I. It's not like we need a huge amount, but you just don't know. And you don't always know what your own chicken will do. Maybe they did fine all winter last year, but then this year they're a year older, and that's kind of a factor as well. So it is important to keep track, and it is important that you know the best way to store them. Should you really feel the need, maybe you forgot a whole bunch of them and you want to see, you put it in a mason jar with water. If it goes to the bottom and sideways, it's totally fine, but now you got to use it because you washed it. If it's tilting up a little but stays low, use it right away, but it's fine. But if an egg truly floats to the top, it's one that you don't even want to crack because it could have that horrible sulfur smell. And of course, some other benefits, they eat a lot of insects. One of the things with insects, though, a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I really want to have chickens to eat the ticks and this, that, and the other. If the town, and it doesn't sound like yours is, won't let them free range at all in the yard, then they're not going to be able to get as many ticks, mosquitoes, and everything else that they might possibly eat, because then that mosquito would have to get through the run wire at just the right time when a chicken's around to eat it. So they're going to eat more insects if you let them be out in the yard. Now, one thing that is different with your new law and mine is because we had a lot of opposition in this town when we got our initial pilot. People really didn't, like, heaven forbid, they get in their yard and all this kind of stuff, is we're not allowed to free range our chickens outside their run unless an adult is out there with them. So normally, since my husband and I are both retired, he'll go out, sit in his chair, maybe have his newspaper with him, and also be kind of keeping an eye on them. And I'll do my chicken chores because they really are my chickens. And they get up to have a lot of grass. I actually grow a small area that's for them, that's just sown with chicken foraging seeds, so that the stuff that they like, so they have that to play in. And they do eat a lot of insects that way. And of course, their chicken poop makes wonderful fertilizer. So chickens in compost piles. Chickens are wonderful with compost. They really help you a lot. They do all the work. Give them access to your pile, depending on, you know, how your town is with compost piles. I don't know that. But one of the things you have to consider is that chicken manure compost would be very, very hot, and you shouldn't be using it for probably at least about 2 months, that you should be making compost out of your chicken waste. And also, and we'll talk a little bit about where the chickens can go in your vegetable garden, is you want to be really careful if they did happen to poop right next to one of your favorite plants or real close to it, and whatever, you want to take the hose and dilute it some, because if it's too close to a growing plant that's your favorite, it could be too hot and could burn it. So this ideally is the perfect kind of compost. It gets sun, it gets the rain, and chickens love to hop up there and dig through it, but not everybody wants to have an open composter. So these are I had these composters now for probably 20 years. They're square plastic, which means they don't take up as much room. And we opened the bottom of the one that's getting closer to being done. And every one of my chickens, actually, the only one of these that's still living is Iris. Iris was my very first chicken. She's at least 6.5. The other two have died since then. But even my new ones, they're like 3/4 of the way inside the composter. So they're working on it for you. And of course, you can use the composting and use it as fertilizer. So one of the benefits to your town and to the earth, to Mother Earth and the environment, is that most people that raise backyard chickens don't use pesticides or herbicides or even fertilizers. You don't really have to, because you're getting it for free. It's an extra benefit. So, you know, it's just a whole kind of different attitude. And of course, we all know about chickens as pets, and especially with kids. Kids just love them. And these are just a few fun pictures of that. How to train chickens? Yeah, you can train them some, and it depends, of course. I think they're just like people. Some are super, super smart. My one therapy chicken that was the very, very best one we've ever had, her name was Sadie. And I would take her all over the place to assisted living and whatever. And I still have this little red carrier, and it had one of those double zipper kind of things, a couple different places so you could get to your animal. Well, she figured out if she put her beak between the two zippers and pushed, she could open it up. And we're on one of the major 295 highways around here. And I see this chicken head looking out at me because she figured out how to get to do that. So some of them are very, very smart. And I do technically train my therapy chickens not to be pecking at jewelry. They love red. It's their favorite color. So you have to watch elderly women in assisted living because they a lot of times like red nail polish. So there are things you can do. And they love to have a hanging cabbage. It's actually like a game for them. They bat it around, but they eat it like it's going out of style. I have 8 chickens. That's the max I can have here and the max we really need. And I go a head of cabbage about every 3 days. So they are very into their cabbage. And young and old, of course, love chickens. And one quick thing about the therapy chickens. In the UK, people that are retired are called pensioners, where we would call them retirees. Well, now they're actually having henchingers because a lot of them are in the assisted living facilities. So some of them just like to hold and cuddle them like this nice one woman is in her wheelchair. And others are capable enough to go out and maybe clean the coop out, because it really isn't anything special when you're using a kitty litter scoop, or collect the eggs and whatever. So I don't know of any assisted living around here, but I really wish they do that. And we do go visit them. And this is Rosie. She was my very first therapy chicken. And I said we work a lot with developmentally challenged young adults. They wear chicken diapers every time we go anywhere, and they get used to that. So they really don't mind. So anyway, in the past, raising chickens was really encouraged. Most of you might have seen this Uncle Sam Expects You to Keep and Raise Chickens paper. There was an old movie of Shirley Temple way before all your time, even before mine, where she had a chicken with her. And this is from 1917 with Uncle Sam, and he's got chickens all around him. So then chickens just grew out of fashion. Everybody was looking down upon farms and farmers and wanting to have the little white picket fences and whatever. And that's when a lot of the laws changed. So it was most common that the laws changed somewhere after World War II, usually by 1950. So we're trying to fix all those things. And Martha Stewart is how I got into it. My husband and I love to cook, and she, of course, has lots of chickens on her multi-million-dollar properties. But she would started bringing in 2010 a couple of her cool chickens into the studio to talk about them. And I just thought, well, I got to do this. And then I found out it was illegal. And I said, it's not going to stay illegal. I'm fixing this. And I was fortunate enough to do that. So most of you have seen pictures of them in the traditional cages, and in some states it is still legal that you could have 1 or 2 chickens in a cage the size of a piece of computer paper, which is totally horrific. But then they start charging you money for cage-free hens. But do you think that's a way to live either? They're all stepping in each other's heads and poop, and they have to snip the top of their beak so they don't peck each other, but they charge you an extra $1 or so a dozen for cage-free eggs. And then they charge you another $1 or so for free-range eggs. And if you look, yeah, it looks cool. There's like little doors or windows along the side in this particular barn. But if you're not the chicken that's fortunate enough to get near that window, it didn't make any difference. Some barns have one little window at opposite ends. And if you think they're going out in grass, nope, that's a misconception as well. 99%, guessing, just saying that number, but I mean almost all free range barns, they go out on cement. They don't go out in grass. They go out in cement. So yeah, they get fresh air and sunshine, but they can't dig, they can't forage. Certainly not the way to go. It's another concentrated animal feed operation. So that's cage free. This is pasture raised, as I mentioned. That's where chickens belong, or in your backyard where they can get the grass. Of course, we need to make sure it's legal, which it is, yay, in Oakland. So some basic stuff. Can you do it? It takes some time because obviously building or getting your coop set up and getting things organized. Space. Now, this is the thing that I really, really want to talk about, and there is another paper that a slide that you'll see. An adult chicken needs at least 2 square feet of space inside the coop. That really is best if it's 4 square feet, okay? If you're buying a coop or plans for a coop or anything at all, do not go by what the seller or manufacturer says, how many birds it'll hold. The 2 square foot would be for bantams, those miniaturized versions of regular chickens. They're really small compared to a standard chicken. So they're legally, they can say it'll hold 10, but they mean bantams. It might hold 4 regular chickens. So instead of looking at what they say, what you need to do is look at the specs and look and see the square footage of the floor, total floor space, nothing else, not nuts boxes coming into the coop, floor space. And it should be ideally 4 feet, 4 square feet per chicken, 3 maybe if you don't have really big chickens. But I like to say 4. And the other reason that that's important is, yeah, normally they're only in the coop to lay their eggs and to sleep. But if it's a horrible windy day, chickens hate wind. They're going to be in the coop. If it's blowing and icy and whatever, cold, that won't matter. We have no problems in this whole area of New Jersey with cold, as long as you have some chickens to kind of get together. They have 6,000 to 8,000 feathers a piece, so they have their winter coats on all year long. We'll talk a little bit about summer care of chickens, because it's way harder here in the summer, and we were getting to have 4 days in the 90s starting Sunday, I think. But anyway, they might be in there because it's raining and blowing or snow and whatever. So if they're in a real small coop and run, they're going to be pecking at each other. You see pictures on the Facebook pages all the time. Oh, look, this one, they all picked the feathers off of her butt. Most of the time it's because they're bored and they're in too small of a coop. So you need those things like hanging cabbages or whatever. There's all kinds of websites on keeping your chickens having fun or whatever, but most of it's space. Okay, so I can't push that enough. Don't look at this coop will hold 10 chickens. It won't. Okay, and the bigger you can make your run, the better. Okay, they just need space, and that's the other thing. Most small coops that come with runs, the run isn't very big either. So it's going to cost money. I mean, you know, these really cheapo things that you see, one bad windstorm is going to blow them over, and then you're stuck because your chickens were in there. So you want something that's a little bit heavy and substantial, and otherwise you're just going to have to get another one real soon anyway. Okay, pullets versus hens. And of course, everybody always says, well, is that a rooster or a chicken? Of course, they're all chickens. Okay. Just like human beings have males and females, chickens have roosters and hens. If the female chicken is generally over a year old, that's when she really is a hen. Prior to that, a pullet is a young female chicken. These are some backyard favorites. Sometimes it has to do with their personalities. I have 2 Buff Orpingtons now. They don't lay as many eggs. Look at the one in the middle, Barred Rock, 280 eggs a year. Buff Orpington's 190. So some of it has to do with that. And you also want to make sure that they're, depending on your situation, whether they have an issue being confined in runs, they really don't want to be doing that. And here's a couple. I have an Australorp too. Actually, I have 2 Australorps. I had a Wyandotte, but she died. Silkies and Polish are so cute, but 99% of the time, you're actually going to need to have a second coop. Most standard chickens will not do well with these chickens with all the pretty feathers and whatever around their heads. They know what chickens should look like. They've proven that chickens know up to 100 other chickens on a farm. It's like, oh, I know that one. That's Susie. That's, you know, whatever. They know all the chickens on the farm, 100 chickens, but they don't want them to look a lot different. So they will be totally terrible bullies to Silkies and Polish. So most people that I know that want to mix flock actually have 2 coops in order for them to not have an issue. Now, the other big thing that towns worry about, ours was keeping them in the yard, but also, God forbid, anybody got a rooster. And if any of you are on the Facebook page about chickens, it's all over the place now, because most of these chickens were hatched, their chicks were hatched February-ish or so, and now you're seeing more posts than anything else. Oh, I have this oopsie rooster. Can somebody help me? Don't call me. I'm not helping. I'm telling you how not to get a rooster. I don't want to know about it, okay? Because it's on you. If you want to take a chance, then you better have plan B. You better have, you can't have roosters in Oakland. So you better have a family member that has a farm or whatever. Have it ready before you even get chickens, because if you get an oopsie rooster, it's very, very hard to find somebody that'll take them, that won't just have them for Sunday dinner. And if that's okay with you, then that's another option, I guess. But sex-linked chickens are the best at being able to tell males and females when they hatch. Okay, so we'll talk about Tractor Supply. But the thing is that there's red, brown, and black. The females always have the color. The males are always white. So as long as the store that you're buying them from is honest with you and hasn't accidentally mixed it up, which sometimes they can, you always leave the white chick there. So if you're determined to have chicks, to me, I've taken care of chicks for babysat chicks. So I know a little bit about it. I had never wanted to have a chick because I didn't want to take any chances running the program where I am with 23 going on 24 homes with chickens. And I didn't want to take a chance of a rooster. So that's one reason why I don't do that. But anyway, some people really like the whole chick thing. It's great for your kids, yada, yada, yada. But then please think about getting sex-linked chickens instead of your other favorite breeds. So here would be red sex-linked chickens. I wound up with 4 of them over the course of having chickens now for 5.5 years. And it just kind of says it's a Delaware and a Rhode Island red, and that equals a red sex-linked to have brown eggs. And here would be, if it was, this is a true one with red sex-linked. So you can see all the white ones are the males, all the reddish ones are the females. And this is as they're a little bit older, kind of pigeon size, and you can see the male is the white one. Now there are some that they call, that they can somewhat tell, but it's going to depend on the breeder, depend on the seller. I don't think it's worth a chance. So if you want any of the other breeds, my suggestion is wait till they're about 14 to 15 weeks old. Yes, you'll pay more. They're not going to be $1 a piece. They might be $20 a piece because they raise them for you up to that time. But generally around 12-ish weeks, give or take, is when the roosters are going to start their kind of sound. And that's what it sounds like in the beginning. It's not a bright cock-a-doodle-doo. So if you wait till 14, 15 weeks, then you're not going to have as much of a chance of getting a rooster. You're going to find a lot of these papers online, just showing you, for example, and, you can look through what's the most important to you. Around here, they need to be heat tolerant, if anything, because other than that, you're going to be working hard. You need to know whether they're kind of calm. Being broody means that they have this really major desire to be a mother, and they lay their eggs and then they sit on them and they won't get out of the nest. Or even if there aren't eggs, they think there are or whatever. I just had to break one of my buffs, and buffs have a high rate of broodiness. And she was broody for about 6 or 7 days and wouldn't get out of the nest. They're really bitchy. They kind of scream at you and stuff if you go anywhere near them. I had to take her out periodically because she really wasn't eating and drinking, and she still wasn't breaking. So I brought her in. It's called broody jail. She was in a dog cage for 2 days without really, a metal bottom. The metal pieces of the thing was there, not the plastic bottom. And put her back out and she's fine. So they just have to get over that because they can be really nasty. So you don't want one that's like real commonly broody. And also, you kind of can't see the last column. It's their environment, and it's whether they like being confined or they really want to be like free ranged all the time. So if you like an Ancona, if that's that, you can see the F one. That's why I'm picking that one. They like to forage. They don't want to be in a run. So they're going to be the ones that give you the most trouble if you have to keep them in a run. So it's very hard to really get summer tolerant ones around here. They're harder to find from breeders, but you can see why they do a better job at heating, getting rid of the heat. They're off the ground. They have longer legs, big combs. Okay, big combs are great for heat because the combs get a lot more blood supply to it. The air blows over it, cools them off. Just like our faces get red, the air blows over it and cools us off. So that's another way that they would get cool off, and having bigger wattles. Now, obviously, this is a rooster, but I have a hen that if you took that big tail away, she still has a gigantic comb like that. I've never had a chicken that had as big a comb. In the winter, though, you have to be careful. They'll get frostbite. So I have a couple hens that have real tiny little combs. They don't do quite as well in the summer. They'll never get frostbite. And then most of them are kind of in between. Winter tolerant, there's Buff Orpingtons. Okay, so a red sex-linked and whatever. So just, kind of look it up. This is the thing that I always thought was an old wives' tale, but I just found out that no, it really is true. And it's definitely was true in my chickens. So if you look at their earlobes, which is the furthest little flap in the back, not their wattle underneath of their chin, but that one that has a all red earlobe makes brown eggs. If they have a white earlobe, like the picture on the right, they make white eggs. And if they have that little turquoisey spot, every one of my Easter eggers, I've had 3. Every single one has that blue spot. Depending on the light, sometimes you can see it 6 feet away. So it is really pretty cool. I don't know if anybody has Easter eggers and they haven't looked, but see whether that blue spot's there. So what do they need overall? They need warmth, comfort, food, water, and safety. This is really cute coop. I have a couple problems with it. Well, maybe it really isn't a problem, but you can't tell if the bottom under that coop has wire to keep anything out of there. I'm assuming it does. But this is actually called the eggplant because it's purple. And it has the nest box on the outside, which I think is wonderful. It doesn't take floor space away from inside the coop. And it's why I think it's a real good to think about. It has a nice door to open to get into the run. It's really great if you can get in the run. It helps you keep it cleaner than if the run's real kind of squatty. They even have a little garden around it. But I'm not going to go into it tonight because this lecture's 2 hours, and I hope I cut it down to about an hour. And a lot of the end stuff was all the gardening, what you shouldn't plant and what could be dangerous and this and that. So, we can always do another thing, but that's something you have to check. These chick days, I truly, truly hope you never go to Tractor Supply. They really, they don't necessarily have and I see it all the time, they don't necessarily have in their bins, and they changed their bins and they were stacked, which were horrible. I hear that they're getting back to these again, but they just aren't educated about chickens, and they get mixed in, and somebody will say, oh, well, they told me it was this, and it turns out it's a whole different breed, and maybe it's a rooster. I know somebody that got 6 chicks at Tractor Supply, 4 of them were roosters. So I don't suggest that. Raising chicks, even though it's hot out now, you got new little chicks, you have to have some heat for them. That's okay. A lot of people do that. I prefer, from my education and reading and all, these brooders like this fancy brooder, because it's not a heat lamp. It's actually, they can go under it. If they're cold, they can move out if they're too hot, and that makes a big difference. And then this is just a little chart that goes into like what brand new chicks needed to be between 90 and 95 in the room that you're raising them in. And then week 9 by 65, 65 degrees minimum. They have to be fully feathered, and it should not be going. And hopefully we're past that cold weather we just had. I don't know what you had, but it was like 41 down here. They should not be out less than 50 degrees ever. It should be always at least 50 degrees if you're taking new chicks outside. There's different types of food. Most times they do a crumble, it's smaller, or a mash that's really small. It can be medicated or not to prevent coccidiosis. Some breeders will vaccinate them, in which case then you don't need the medicated, so you should find out. But the majority of breeders only vaccinate against something called Marex, which can wipe out whole flocks. So most times that's all they do. And if you're using local vets, most times they can't afford the vaccines. They have to buy 1,000 doses of vaccines, even for something like Salmonella. So they're not going to, the average vet that even feels comfortable treating chickens is not going to be taken care of enough to vaccinate them. Crumbles are nice and small, and chickens are in their food all the time. They think, oh, this is a cool nest, I'm going to sit in here. It's really, really common. Waterers important, and you can see on the right, if you have chicks, you should put marbles in the bottom of their waterer. Chicks are very top heavy, so they're more likely to drown. They would get over to get water and then fall into the water. So if you have some kind of marbles or aquarium, little stones, it'll keep that from happening. And as I said, fully feathered, usually 6 to 10 weeks, depending on the breed, as long as temperatures are at least 50 degrees. So this is your thing overall. As I said, coop floor space, forget the 2 unless you're having bantams. 4, nesting boxes. Most coops you buy sell you way more nesting boxes than you need. I don't even know why they do that even. They generally need 1 for every 3 to 5 hens. We have 3 little tiny partitions and they're not even that separated. And I've never seen more than 2 in there at the same time, and everybody's happy. Roosting bars about 8 inches. You'll see some roosting bars. 10 square feet per hen. As I'm telling you, you need lots of room in the run. They're spending almost all their time there. Half a cup of feed a day. Up to 2 cups of water, especially in the summertime. They drink a whole bunch more. Up to 16 hours to lay an egg. We're not paying much attention to eggs hatching, but they take 21 days. Now the coop on the left, and this is a pretty cool story. This is my neighbor's. My neighbor 5 doors away is now the chair of our backyard chicken program. And she got 4 of these lavender Orpingtons. She had a kit, she built this. And when I picked up her Orpingtons from the breeder, I was going to get something else. And we took one look at the size of these Orpingtons and said, there's no way 4 is going to fit, because that little tiny house with the door is really the whole coop. Okay. And there's 3 of those chickens. So that's how I got Iris, who you saw in one of those first pictures. She looks gray, but she's a lavender Orpington. She kept 3. I got 1. I went back the next week, same breeder, but I got a gold lace Orpington. And they were my first 2. But here again, you got to know the size that your chicken's going to be and what's going to fit in that coop. Chicken tractors are okay if you have lots of property. Statistically, after a couple months, people stop moving and it's a pain in the neck. Peck on, because as a rule, if you, once the chickens are in the run, they are going to be, the grass is probably going to be gone in 2 days. So, I mean, in theory, it's nice, but you need a pretty big property to maneuver it around and to make it worthwhile. There's just a few other coops for just reference. Plastic coops are okay, and you'll see I have an igloo. I use it for my isolation coop, which we can talk about. This is an igloo that has wheels. They're very expensive. They're nice. They're easy to clean. They're all plastic. They say that they're predator resistant. They can't say they're predator proof. And you can kind of see why when we talk about predator proofing. The wire at the bottom of the run comes out a decent size, but it's not buried down. So there's always a slim chance that something could burrow under it. And that's why the company has to say it's predator resistant, but not predator proof. And there's my igloo. I have a small one. It's really only good for 2 birds. When I get new birds, and we'll talk about biosecurity, and they're done their 30 days of complete isolation, they go out to my igloo for another couple of weeks with starting to integrate them with the other flock, the current flock, and then they stay in there until I feel comfortable enough with actually putting them on the roost with the other girls. So this was my first coop. Got it at an actual farm store. It was very heavy. It's a Amish lean-to. But knowing what I knew before I got it, number one, the window doesn't open its decoration, and we need windows that open. So you'll see another picture. We wound up having, because it's small, you can see it only came up to my husband's waist, the whole coop, which made it easy to clean. You just leaned forward and cleaned it out. But we had to get, the windows actually came from a duck blind company because they were that small. We left the one in because it was cute, but we put in 2 other windows. And also what I absolutely love is solar panel door, electric door. We still move that into our current run, our current coop. And it's fantastic because I can either set it to open at a certain time and close at a certain time. I've been paying a lot of attention to my girls, and they're really quiet in the morning considering I have 8 of them. In the past, some of the current ones, I had to go and shut the door, time it so that it wouldn't open till like 6:30 because they could be out there 5:30 and walking away. And that wouldn't have been too good. So I could do it on a timer. Otherwise, it opens at dawn and shuts at dusk. And so far, so good. Here we are into June, and it's almost the longest day of the year, and I haven't had to play with it. But I listen real careful. Or if it was super, super hot, I can leave it open all the time. So we had to build this addition. That's why the side on the end is kind of barn red, and the other side is fire engine red because my husband didn't pay attention to what color the red he was buying. So we just lived with it. And he basically doubled the size because we knew that little coop would have been fine for 2 chickens. And we had 4 chickens. So we needed the extra space, and we had the little steps and whatever. So this is my first run. Now, this is really important too. I cannot stress this enough. I will disown you if you don't have hardware cloth all over your coop and run, because you're going to be the first one saying, oh my goodness, the raccoon got in, I lost my chickens. They're not going to get into hardware cloth. We have 1/4 inch hardware cloth everywhere. Okay, that's why it's good. That picture on the left, you can see the tiny little squares. It goes on the top. It's on everywhere. It's on the windows. It's you have to cover your regular windows with it. Raccoons can break the windows. Okay, makes it totally predator proof. You'll see some more as we go along, and you can see the solar panel coming out. We also didn't have any ventilation, those little white things that makes ventilation. We had to add them. So the only thing that we didn't do initially, and you can see he was building this in December. I got Iris is like the second week of January. We still had snow on the ground, but we didn't put a cover on it, and it was really quick. It was like, nope, we really need a cover. So initially he just bought one big sheet because it fit of corrugated plastic, because otherwise your whole run's going to be mud. And they're not going to be happy. And they also have a higher chance of getting all kinds of respiratory things and whatnot. So you need it covered with wire to keep hawks out. That's the other way. Oops, geez, a hawk got in. Well, you had no cover on the top of your run. Duh. So you need to have the cover, and you need something to keep the rain out and whatever. So that's how that was. Now this is the new one. 72, and I got this for my 70th birthday, and we had a builder build it, so I got everything I wanted. So you can see the nest boxes on the outside, doesn't take up space. We have that window that's next to the door and one on the wall on the right-hand side, and they can open and shut. They're covered with hardware cloth. It's tall enough that I can walk in. Our coop and run can't be more than 6.5 feet tall. That was one thing, that was the only thing we compromised on with our ordinance. Initially, it was 5.5 feet tall. The planning board gave us that. We couldn't even, we would be stooped over to walk into the run to clean. So we got a foot, but we were hoping that we wouldn't have any limit on the height, but that was the only thing we could deal with it. I wanted to be able to walk in and out of there, and be able to do a better job cleaning it and whatever. We have electricity in there. And this is our run. You might think it was the very beginning, 4 feet of it was the original run. And then we extended it way back because we have no limit on the size of our run. So it goes all the way back. So now the run's 3 times the size of the first one. And because I am into such stuff with sustainability, they're all permeable pavers on the area around there, and gardening and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so inside the coop, all kinds of roosting bars. People do all kinds of things. Some people put these slings under the roost bar to catch the poop. I don't Can't see a real reason for that, but that's what some people do. I think it's funny that somebody used toilet seats as nesting boxes, and different kinds of things that you can use for bedding. You can certainly have pine coops, really nice pine coops, but no, I'm sorry, forget that. You can't have a cedar coop, but you can't put cedar shavings in because it has a lot of volatile gases that get out and it can hurt your chickens. So these are the different kind of things that you can have inside. I like PDZ, which is a volcanic substance. It looks like sand. You would not know it wasn't sand. It makes it super, super easy to use a kitty scoop. I could totally clean the poop out of my coop in 2 minutes. And it's a 6x8 coop. It could hold 12 chickens. We can only have 8 at the most, but it gives me that extra room. What I had to do, which I'm not thrilled about, is now that I have 8 chickens and they're all in the coop together, when they chase each other up and down, we have this little routine, and you're going to know, how do I know this? Because I have closed circuit TV inside my coop so I can watch them, which was really fun when I had 3 surgeries. I could sit in the living room and watch my chickens, and I loved it. But I see them, and my one that likes to be in the right place tends to push them all off. We go through this for like 15 minutes every night till they all settle in. With just the PDZ in there and 8 chickens, it was like a dust cloud. And I didn't want them inhaling that. It never was a problem when I had 4 or 5 or 6 chickens. It got to be more a problem with more. So now I have the PDZ on the bottom, which helps absorb odors and just makes it drier. I use a little bit of that First Saturday lime, which I really, really like. That helps dry it up too. And then I have a light cover of pine shavings on top. So if they jump down or get pushed down, we don't have dust clouds. Some people use leaves, sand, pine needles. I use regular straw. And when they get it all nice and broken down, I use it in my garden. Okay, so these are a couple other things, and they're really cute, but I have reasons to have them in here. I don't see any covering at the bottom of this one on the left. It's a gorgeous coop, but those chickens are coming right out in your yard. There is no run. You know, if it had a covering, it would have to be around that the place where they come out and whatever. So to me, that's a beautiful, dangerous coop, because there's nothing to keep, there's no run. The other one in a lot of towns would be illegal. Most times you cannot come smack up to your fence. Most times we even have a 5-foot setback that our coop and run can be. Plus it has to be 20 feet, which the 5-foot fits in to the windows. But, you know, most towns will not let you build up and use your fences like one side of your run. It sounds like it would be fun, but if that's really the property line, then you have issues.
We actually, the way Oakland is, you can use your fence line as part of your run. So
Yeah.
that was actually something that we fought for, because I know people already have that in place.
Yeah.
So the coop has to be set back, but not the run.
Right. I mean, I think that's a great idea when you're able to do that, because it does save you that whole side. And as long as it's a solid fence, it's more predator proof than even having hardware cloth. It's great. It's just none of the ones around here would let you do that. It is nice to have vines around it, because, you know, like I say, it's harder to keep them cool in the summer here. And if that's an issue with all that sun pouring into the run, they're not going to be happy. So the important things to look at when you're locating your coop, obviously close to your house. I know sometimes people say, oh, put it all the way in the back. I have plenty of space back there. You really feel like walking through 3 feet of snow to get to the run, and giving them fresh water and all that. Near water, near electricity, if you don't have electricity actually in your coop. Sun and shade is best. Deciduous trees, the kind that lose their leaves in the winter, are great, because the leaves are there to help shade them in the summer, and they get more sun in the winter and stay warmer, close to your supplies. And obviously we're in the composting and near your composter, so it makes it easy. And make sure it conforms to any ordinance in your town. Okay, a couple different kind of nest boxes. Mine's more like the one on the left, but we don't have even that big partition. It's kind of about 3 inches high. They just usually are on totally opposite ends, not in the middle. Roosting bars can be all different kinds. This is kind of more, you'll see mine inside actually. And lots of ventilation. If you see any condensation on windows from the inside, you don't have enough ventilation and they're going to get respiratory illnesses. You almost can't have too much ventilation. We have a fan, a ventilating fan that blows out, as well as our 2 windows being open. Dust baths, they're going to make their own. I have right now probably about 4 or 5 holes. We keep thinking they're digging their way to China. That they just have made, but we also have one inside the run in an area that I know is wide enough that it doesn't get wet. And it has a combination of the lime, wood ash, and construction sand. And they really like to be in there. That way they don't have to have baths. They really can take care of mites and lice. Daily care makes perfect sense. Fresh food and water. Your water every single day. If they get it really, really dirty, it's nice to even change it in the middle of the day. Make sure it doesn't freeze. We'll talk about that. I use frozen water bottles, which I don't buy. A couple people save theirs because I don't believe in plastic water bottles. It's bad for the environment. And I put water in them and freeze them in the freezer and then put them in their water so that it stays nice and cold. Look for any signs of predators. I walk around my coop just about every single day to make sure that there's no signs that something's trying to dig under there, and just really keep a good eye at them. I rather bring them in and observe them if I have any idea that something isn't right. Eggs, best especially either in real cold weather or in real hot weather. It's nice if you can collect them a couple times a day. And it also, the longer they're in there, they might go broody because they want to sit on the eggs. Light coop cleaning, nothing fancy. So what I have, this is actually the inside of my run on the right-hand side. There's 2 levels. The first one maybe 16 inches off the ground. And then the next one's about another 10 inches high. Don't put, and I didn't know this initially, so we had to move it. The roost that they're going to sleep on is the highest one. They always want to do that. It's kind of a safety thing. They feel safer the higher up they are. And they also sometimes turn around. Some of them will seem like they're always in the same position, facing one way or the other. Most of them sometimes turn around. And if it's too close to that wall where the window is, you're going to have poop all down the wall. So we moved it in a little further, so away from the window. And then this is kind of what it looks like in the morning. This, I think, was when we still had 6 chickens. So it looks like sand, scoop it up, all done. But I have 4 of these, I call them poop trays, but they're really boot trays. They're the ones that you might have out next to your back door so that you can put your dirty shoes or your dirty boots on. I have 4 of them. They fit long ways, and that PDZ is on top. So when I do have to change it out, all I have to do for most of it is slide the tray out because I need to do stuff that's easy for me. So you may also see, and we'll talk about it in a minute, on the wall, that little whitish area, I have sweeter heaters. And it started out with Iris, my oldest, in the little coop. And Iris, even though the roost was about 6 inches off the ground, because remember that coop only went up to like your belly, it was squatty. She wouldn't stay up on the coop, and it had a nice about a foot off the ground, which is great. They can get under there to cool off in the summer. But she would sleep on the floor all the time, and it wasn't insulated underneath of there because we were afraid with them going under, they would be pecking and eating the insulation. So we got one sweeter heater. I learned about it. I actually lectured at Coop camp in Indiana. If any of you are aware of Coop Dreams, and it's a Facebook page, and they I don't know what they're doing this year, but they have Coop camp every year in Indiana, and I lectured on therapy chickens. So we had a big discussion about heating coops. So number 1, never put a heat lamp in your coops. But the sweeter heaters are nice. And I just felt bad for Iris sleeping on the floor. So when we built the new coop, we have one on either side of the window. And all it does is slightly warm the chickens. It does not warm the coop. And that's really important. Your coop should never be more than or less than 10 degrees than what it is outside, ideally. So even if you were, you know, Martha Stewart, you wouldn't put air conditioning in your coop because then they have to come outside and it's 90 degrees. That's not good. That they don't have a chance to adjust their thermostat that way. So in the winter, you don't want to keep it so hot and then they go outside and it's cold. You know, it's really, you don't want to do much, but with the little sweeter heaters, they only heat the chicken. They're also on a plug that doesn't even turn on unless it's getting less than 40 degrees in there. And they can move away from it or move closer and it slightly warms them. Because as I said, our coop is designed for 12 chickens, so I could have room to move around and not feel like they were squeezed in there. So, you know, it may not be quite as warm as if it was exactly the right size for 8 chickens. Okay, care of the chickens, easier than dogs, don't need walks, bask. Now, sometimes my therapy chickens need their butt washed because with wearing diapers, sometimes they kind of get a little funky and they always get their feet washed and a pedicure before we go visit anybody. But really, if I spend 15 minutes a day taking care of my chickens with cleaning out the coop, giving them fresh water, giving them fresh food, a new cabbage, blah, 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 and getting eggs, I spend way more time playing with them, talking with them, working with them, and just making sure that they look fine. Obviously, you do a couple times a year. We do a typical spring and fall. I take every single thing, all the PDZ, everything out of the coop, scrub it all down, whatever, take out all the straw, get all new straw, you know, just really keep a good eye on it. And we do compost the waste and whatever. So we just did that. I just did that, I guess, April-ish, beginning of April. Not going to go through a whole lot of this. There are different layer levels of food depending on the age of the chicken, obviously, as they're closer to being layers, and the average is roughly 20 weeks, certainly can go up to 24. So most people suggest ideally 16 to 18 weeks you switch to layer food. It has a different amount of protein. There's certainly, as I mentioned, different kinds of textures, but that's that. You also have to decide if you want organic versus traditional. Organic probably runs $10 to $15 more for a big bag. Chickens need to have grit. Grit is what helps them digest cellulose. And if they're eating grass and stuff, they particularly need grit. Now, one thing I found with my chickens, I had a little, like a dog dish that had some grit, some calcium, never ever saw any of it get used. Most of the time they will, if they're out foraging and playing in dirt, they're getting grit. That's what it really is. It's very small kind of stones and pebbles and whatever. The reason is the food is in their crop and it's like a washing machine. It needs to agitate. So as it kind of contracts off and on, the grit inside there breaks down the cellulose. So it's real important, especially if they're eating a lot of grass, that they have some access to either grit that you can buy or plenty of time in the soil where they can get it. Scratch is essentially dried corn. You only give them that in the winter because corn, you can give them fresh corn, that's fine. But the cracked corn and whatever makes them hot. And you certainly don't want to be doing that in the summertime. So in the winter, around 4 o'clock or so, I would go out and toss out some scratch for them, and it kind of helps warm them up through the night. Calcium, as I said, they don't even eat it. So I just take my shells and, depending on the day, either throw them in the oven for 10 minutes or something, or put them in the microwave and mange them up in the food processor. And I just put a little tiny sprinkle, like almost like you would sprinkle salt on food. And so they get some calcium. Scraps, it should be, scraps from veggies. Mine do eat a lot of veggies, and you do want to be careful with not giving them too many treats. Here's the different kinds. Mash, you can even put water or something into it for sick chickens or real young chickens because it's so small. Most adult chickens really prefer pellets, and there's less waste. Keep all your food up in tightly closed metal cans because animals can bite through the plastic, and that's not good. Things that aren't safe, Common sense. Dried undercooked beans. They can eat cooked beans, but not undercooked beans. And I'm not sharing my candy and chocolate with them. I don't care what they say. They ain't getting any. You don't want to give them raw eggs because then they'll get the idea, oh, this looks sort of like ours when they break, and then they could start eating their eggs. But one thing that can be good for really multi-chickens or sick chickens is a little scrambled eggs. They don't put the connection together that that's their eggs, so it's okay. They can eat cooked potatoes, just not raw potatoes. And you got to watch the salt. And they love treats. My chicken's favorite treats are blueberries. So they go crazy. I put a small handful in there with their food every day, or freeze them if it's really hot and whatever. And they love watermelon. Feeders, this is the standard kind. I don't like it because they never have a lid on them. I've never found a lid. My husband actually took the lid of a 5 times it because most people keep their feeders out in their run. It gets all wet and yicky and you waste a lot. So you got to come up with something else. And they do have this cool kind. And as I said, chickens are smart. So they can come and push on the button, push on with their feet, and it opens the lid. And at least it keeps it dry, but you got to keep their food fresh and dry. And they really, really need a lot of water. As I said, it doubles almost to about a pint a day when it's hot. Some people put a little apple cider vinegar in their water. As long as they're still drinking, it's fine. And you can't obviously use that in galvanized waterers, which we use in the winter. Keeping it all thawed, which I'll show you. Some people like these little nipple waterers. I know too many people that thought, oh, well, they're cool. They got their water, and here the things were either plugged up or had leaked out and the chickens weren't getting water. So I'm not a fan of them, but I've never had them. It's just I've had too many people that have told me that. And the dirty water in the wagon, that's always the chicken's favorite ones. Mine, if the recycle bucket's upside down and there's water around the rim sitting there because we haven't dumped it yet, that's the water they drink. Don't matter that they just got gorgeous water with a cold ice bottle inside. It's like, whoa, I think this water's going to be great. We have the galvanized one for the winter, and that's our summer one, which, okay, you can put things in. But I like the galvanized one because we also have the heater thing, and that's also on a thermostat plug. So it only comes on when it's under 40 to keep it from freezing. Never had it freeze. This was our original coop in the winter, just to kind of show you. You still, if you're going to put any plastic, remember how small I said the run was. So snow would go blowing in there like it was going out of style. You still have to have ventilation at the top. So you can see above the door, it's open. There's some around the side here because you can't just totally envelope them in plastic. And we even had the plastic along the bottom, which is where they could go under there in the wintertime. Thank heavens we haven't had any winters like that recently. That's the sweeter heater that I was talking about. No fires. It's designed that it will never cause a fire in your coop. Okay, which you can't say that about heat lamps. Heat lamps cause fires, which are the number one cause of fires are heat lamps. And of course, since most coops are near your house catches fire. Summer care, ice their water, some freeze their food, lots of shade, fans. We also have a little fan that blows into the coop when it's really hot. I'm not crazy in South Jersey, and I'm sure you're about the same with using misters because the thing is, you can think it would cool them off, but we're already so humid around here. Maybe if you lived in Arizona and it was 100 degrees, a mister might make them feel better. Here it adds to humidity, so I don't think it's a great idea. Or you can put some corn in water and freeze it and then pop it out so they get some ice. One thing I do is I give them ice cubes in water and then put a bunch of black sunflower seeds in it. So instead of bobbing for apples, they bob for sunflower seeds, which they love the seeds, but they're also getting plenty of cold water. I've never tried the swimming pool thing, so I don't know. I know some people that say they will, at least, because if you can get their feet cool, then the whole body will get cool. And you do have to watch with summer. Black chickens have the more chance of having heat stroke because black feathers hold the heat. So I have 3 totally black chickens that I really worry about. And, you know, they start panting too much and whatever, it really worries me. My 2 little Easter eggers have an awful lot of dark feathers, but it just absorbs the heat. You have to be kind of careful with that. Keeping them safe from predators. And you might not obviously be able to see the bottom, but number 42 are hawks. Number 35 is raccoons. Dogs are even on here. 24 is opossums. 22 is fox. So the biggest one is hawks. So that's why you have to have a cover on top of your roost that hawks are not going to get into, and watch them. You know, we see them and we listen for them, and we see any going over, it's like scoot them back in the run. You know, I don't want to take any chances. There's the raccoons looking, where is it? Chicken wire, of course. They can bite through that and get into your run and your coop. And hawks are terrible. Foxes, even dogs. It might not be your dog, could be your neighbor's dog got into your yard. We don't, thank heavens, have no issues with snakes down here. Snakes don't usually bother chickens, they eat the eggs. There's your hardware cloth. It should be attached to the, this is not my coop, but you attach it to the bottom. Ideally, it goes down 6 to 8 inches deep down in the ground and comes out to close to a foot. Something at least like that. Worst case, it comes out 6, 8 inches, and then you can always put bricks or heavy rocks on top that if something tried to shovel underneath, burrow underneath, that it would fall down because of the heavy rocks around it, because they will burrow under there and get in. And you can see in the drawing how that comes out, but it should really go below the ground as well. Hardware cloth. Okay, so this was the original, and this shows you how that all happened. So you can see even with the window open, hardware cloth. You can see my husband used his electric drill and attached, not just staple, you have to drill it because raccoons are pretty smart with pulling staples out. As it all attached there, it came down, it came out, bricks all around the bottom. So if I would see one brick out of place, maybe somebody else kicked it, I don't know, but I have to think maybe it was a predator and I don't want that happening. So everything has to have that. And I do like the coops that are up because it gives them, actually, it doubles their run space because that's really technically part of their run, and it gives them shade. Don't use window screen, hardware cloth over your windows. There's a hawk right on top. I can't get through, it's got some kind of covering on it. Deadbolt locks, not the typical hook and eyes. We have the kind that you use your thumb, and raccoons evidently don't know how to use your thumb to slide that piece down. So both the door of our run and the door of the coop that I was coming out of in that picture have those kind of locks on it. Some people use these night guards and security cameras. We have a security camera because we have the setup being in the coop, but normally I don't have it looking at the yard unless I'm looking for something special. And they want to escape. So one thing that you have to do, and here with us having neighbors not wanting chickens in their yard, is never put anything too close to your fence, like an upside down trash box, a trash can or recycling bucket. They're really smart. They're going to figure, or chairs or whatnot. They're going to figure, oh, I'll jump on this chair. Oh, look, now there's a table next to it, and there's the fence. And then you're going to wonder, why are they getting into the neighbor's yard? Because you didn't listen about pulling stuff away. Never have anything close to your neighbor's fence that they can use to jump up. Granted, they can fly up to 6 feet, but usually they're younger chickens, very lightweight chickens, and you should be out watching them that they can't do that. Okay, because you can't catch them. Okay, average human runs 8.6 miles an hour, average chicken runs 9. So you'll never catch them. You have to figure out how to kind of corner them. And most of them will do that squatty motion, which it's kind of controversial between the experts on whether it's strictly they feel like the rooster's coming behind them to mate with them, or whether it is a thing where, you know, you're in charge and the authority thing and they squat down. And if you're lucky if they do that, because then you can catch them and get them back. Fencing is important, and that's the only use for chicken wire, is to keep your chickens out of your garden. Keep your chickens out of something, not keep something out of your chickens. And young hens are more flighty. Like I said, something can just freak them, something kind of funny noise and they'll go running across the yard or flying across the yard. So just be careful with that. They love to beg like dogs. This was my original flock. Of the only ones left are the gray one, Iris. And this was before my dog went blind. She died in the summer too. We had a lot of not good things during 2020. And she became blind a couple years before she died. And they all got along, and she ate the mealworms when the chickens got their treats and vice versa. So these are other ways that you can protect your garden and whatever to keep chickens out. You put a lot of little stones on the edge of your yard where your plants are. They don't like to walk on them. Vegetables, because like I said, a lot of us do that. Ideally you want to keep them away with using the pictures that I just showed you. But it's one thing if it's lettuce. I mean, you can't scrub lettuce good enough to make sure that you don't have any salmonella on it, because you don't know if your chickens are carrying salmonella. It's not something they're going to necessarily show you. But say they happen to poop on butternut squash, where you really can wipe it really good or scrub it, it's better. So anything that you can't really clean well, you don't want them anywhere near that when you're growing vegetables. You really want to keep them away from that, because if they did have salmonella and you ate the food, you can get sick. So be careful with that. There's another, it's not easy to garden that way, but it may be necessary to keep them out of food. And if you do have weeds, dandelions, they love that stuff. Don't consider them weeds, considering them food and treats for your chickens, because they love them. Biosecurity, we're wrapping up now, is very, very important for so many reasons. It basically is protecting your birds from other birds and other birds from your birds, and you really need to help protect them. So number one, even though you love backyard birds, you really should not have bird houses and bird feeders in your backyard. One of the biggest causes of illness in your birds would be wild birds, and one of the biggest causes of mites and lice are backyard birds being around your chickens too. You can't keep them away. You're not going to live in a bubble in your backyard, but you can not encourage them. And if you really love to do that, and I love to do that, at least do it in the front yard where your chickens aren't, so that you can still have a bird feeder or a bird house and everybody's happy, but you'll be protecting your birds. And the other thing is that just like people, we get used to the bacteria in our own environment. Your chickens get used to the environment that they're in. So when you get new chickens, you must quarantine them for 30 days. Some people say 3 weeks, but 30 days is better. And so you need some place to put your new chickens. I mean, even if you have 4 chickens already and now you buy 2 more, or as long as you get the new ones from the same place, the same farm or breeder, they don't have to be away from each other, but they have to be totally away from your chickens for a month, because one, they're going to hide their illnesses. Chickens are notorious for hiding any illness from their predator, and it makes sense. If the chicken was really sick, the hawk's saying, well, that's the sick chicken. I'm going to just go down and get that because it's not going to fight me. It's not going to run. So chickens are going to hide their illness. It takes about 2 weeks for them to be comfortable with you, that if they had something, unless it was horrific and they showed up sooner, but it can take 2 weeks for them to show you that they're not well. And if you push the idea of moving them out with your other ones, you're going to get your other flock, your regular first flock, sick too. So I'm fortunate. I have this gigantic kitchen that takes up the whole back half of my house. And I use I call them big hamster cage, the ones that are like 4 feet long and whatever. And they're in the kitchen with me. And I have different shoes, and I won't wear the ones I've been out with my girls. And if I'm picking them up, I'm putting aprons on, whatever. I have them in quarantine for an amount of time. And then that's when I said I'd take them out and they go in their little igloo, but it's 30 days at least. And I did have one chicken that proved the point. It was just about 2 weeks since she started with this respiratory thing. And I wound up having to get her antibiotics from the vet and yada, yada. Now she's one of my therapy chickens. But she had to be comfortable to say, Yep, chicken mom, I'm sick. Salmonella, yes, it can happen. It doesn't happen as much in backyard flocks, although of course numbers are going up because more people are having chickens. It's not that the incidence is more, it's the fact more people have chickens. However, you do have to be careful. In other words, wash your hands, wash your hands, wash your hands. Be really careful with real young kids that are going to pet the chicken and then put their hands in their mouth. You just have to wash your hands. Keep your chickens as healthy as possible, feed them well, keep them in a nice clean coop, the whole 9 yards, and they're going to be more resistant to salmonella. And I'm not going to get into a whole lot on chicken 911. I could do a whole other lecture on mites and lice and bumblefoot and other things that are more common in backyard chickens. But this is my favorite chicken health book. It is called the Chicken Health Handbook. It is good to have one to be able to look things up. Don't always go by what people are saying on Facebook. I mean, I try to not look at it all the time because it drives me crazy. And then here's some other resources. Pat Foreman's the one who taught most of my classes, including my therapy class. So I am a certified handler of therapy chickens. With chickens, we don't certify the chicken, we certify the handler, and I now certify people. So if anybody is interested in doing more work with therapy chickens, let me know. It's just amazing. But there's a lot of things, even gardening. A lot of the chickens for dummies books are actually pretty good. Stories Guide to Raising Chickens is one of the classics. So I just like to have you like our page. We have Camden County Chickens and Therapy Hens on Facebook, as well as a website. And we have our therapy chickens have their own page. It's On the Road with Sandy and Sadie, with Sandy and her sisters, the Therapy Hens. And this was when we were on Action News out of Philadelphia. They came and did a whole story. There's a couple of pictures of special needs young adults was when ABC News was visited one of the places that we work with special needs individuals. And so at any rate, they have their own page, their blog. So it would say, hi, it's Sadie blocking or Sandy block, and then show pictures of what we do. And that's our website, camdencountychickens.org. He's my number one therapy chicken, really good strings, which is absolutely perfect for a therapy chicken, I think. But this is, we went before the pandemic, we did a Halloween thing. So she was dressed up like a little witch. And that's Lizzie. Lizzie's the one who got sick in 2 weeks, and she's phenomenal as well. So they're my two main therapy chickens. I'm working with a couple other ones. And that's Sadie. Sadie was phenomenal. Sadie would peck for mealyworms on her piano, and everybody loved watching Sadie play the piano. And there's both Sadie on top of Freckles. That's when Freckles was blind, but she did not care that the chickens would walk all over. She was absolutely wonderful, and I miss them both. So thank you very much. Questions?
Nope. Doesn't look like it. Well, thank you so much, Gwen. I appreciate this so much. I appreciate all your help all through this whole process. And I got so much out of this. I hope everybody else did. As Michael said earlier, this is going to be posted on the town website, the town YouTube channel. Just for I know we went a little long and lost some people along the way, but I think that a lot of people will get a lot out of this. And I'm so impressed with all the things you had changed so much of your presentation and included so much valuable information about keeping chickens just for us. I appreciate that so much. Thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Oh, Brian is raising his hand now.
Thank you.
Hi, Brian.
Brian,
I was just saying thank you. Just a clapping emoji. Thank you very much. Very informative.
I have to say, I recognize your name all the time from the Facebook page. So, like I know some of you.
Uh-oh.
From
Yeah.
I'm checking out your page all the time, but yeah, I mean, if anybody's ever interested, I did do a winter care class in the past on Zoom. I still have all the links, or could do a new one, whatever. My vet did a 3-part series on chicken health that we recorded, and how to examine your chicken, what you can do before you have to worry about going to a vet. I have all them. You can have any of them that you want. I didn't want to cut out too much of the nitty gritty, so it did run longer than I wanted it to run, but what are you going to do?
Perfect. I got so much more than I had actually even wanted. I'm so happy with all the valuable information you shared with us. So thank you so much again.
And friend me on Facebook. That would be fine. You can send me messages that way. My email is gbaile@verizon.net. You're more than welcome to contact me that way, but stay in touch, and I'm wishing you a very, 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 very successful backyard chicken program. You've worked really, really hard, and all of you deserve it for all the work that you put into this, and I'm really proud of you, and I'm glad to have an affiliation, and I wish I didn't live like 2 hours away from you.
We'll meet one day. Thank you so much again. All right.
For sure.
All right. Good night.
All right. Good night.